The Academy wanted their best effort, Deathworld girl asked. Are you certain about that? The red capacity strip snapped into Nadia Mercer's rescue yoke with a plastic click, loud enough for the students beside her to hear. She looked down at it. Then she looked at the instructor. Around Laboratory 4, 23 other cadets were already fastening gloves, checking harnesses, or rolling their shoulders beneath the white ceiling lights. The room looked less like a gym than the loading bay of a small spacecraft. Steel rails crossed the floor. Suspended rescue cradles hung from motorized tracks. Programmable counterforce units stood behind each training lane, their housings marked with bright bands showing the certified loads they could safely reproduce. Every student had been assigned a color: blue, green, yellow, orange. Nadia's was red. Red was not the highest category. It was the lowest. A few cadets had noticed. Nadia heard the soft click of a tongue from the next lane. The student there was tall and narrow, with silver skin stretched over a frame that looked almost delicate until he moved. His species, the Sarath, had 6 major shoulder joints and a reputation for excellent load control. His strip was orange. He glanced at Nadia's red marker, then at Nadia, then back at the strip. He did not laugh. That almost made it worse. Across the central aisle, Instructor Val Kesson stepped onto the raised observation platform. Today's practical is simple, he said. The room quieted. Emergency logistics, no powered armor, no servo assistance, no artificial leverage beyond what is built into the rescue apparatus. A display behind him lit with the Academy crest. Then came 4 words. Manual capacity assessment, final. Nadia folded her arms. Kesson continued. You have trained for 17 weeks. You know the safety procedures. You know how the yokes work. You know the difference between controlled effort and reckless effort. His eyes passed over the room. Today, I want your best. Nadia looked at her red strip again. Kesson noticed. Cadet Mercer. So, problem. Maybe. Several heads turned. Nadia bent and tapped the small red band clipped beside the yoke's load sensor. This is my assigned range. Yes. Based on what? Your intake profile. Species. Species, body mass, skeletal proportions, prior assessment records, and Academy population data. Nadia nodded once. Then she asked, and you want my best effort? That is the purpose of the assessment. Nadia studied him for another second. She did not sound challenging when she spoke again. If anything, she sounded careful. Are you certain about that? A few cadets laughed. Not cruelly. It was the kind of laugh that followed an awkward question from someone who had misunderstood something obvious. Instructor Kesson did not laugh. He had been running Academy practicals for 11 years, and people who ran practicals for 11 years learned to pay attention when a student asked about safety before the first attempt. You have a concern. I just want the instruction clear. It is clear. Full effort within proper technique. Yes. No species adjustment. The equipment adjusts automatically. No lower cap because I'm human. Kesson's expression changed by half a degree. No. Nadia nodded. Okay. She turned back toward the rescue yoke. Just checking. The Sarath cadet beside her leaned closer. What exactly were you checking? Nadia slid her hands under the padded handles. That everybody heard him. The first exercise was not supposed to be difficult. It was a baseline pull. Each yoke sat on a vertical rail connected to a magnetic counterforce system. Cadets had to raise it from knee height to the marked chest-level line, hold for 3 seconds, then lower it under control. The Academy used the movement because it was difficult to cheat. Poor technique showed immediately. Weak grip showed immediately. Bad posture showed immediately. And if a cadet jerked the load instead of controlling it, the system marked the attempt invalid. Nadia's lane initialized at the top of the red range. The counterforce display showed 1. Not kilograms. Not Earth kilograms anyway. Academy load units were standardized against the average gravitational and musculoskeletal conditions of its member species. The number meant almost nothing to Nadia. The placement did. Of the 24 cadets in the room, her starting lane was 22nd. Only 2 students had lower assigned baselines. One had spent the previous month recovering from a fractured hip plate. The other was 3/4 Nadia's mass. A tone sounded. Nadia lifted. The yoke moved so easily she nearly overran the chest marker. She caught herself, stopped it exactly on the line, held for 3 seconds, and lowered. The system chimed. Pause. Then it paused. The red strip beside her hand blinked. A small actuator released it. The strip dropped into the collection slot beneath the control panel. Another strip slid forward. Yellow. The Sarath beside her looked over. That happens sometimes. Nadia shook out her hands. What does? Automatic reassignment. Good. It means your intake estimate was low. By how much? He looked at the yellow strip. 1 class. Nadia smiled. Good. The next attempt began. She raised the yellow range load. Held it. Lowered it. Pass. The yellow strip dropped away. Green replaced it. This time the Sarath did not say anything. On the 3rd attempt, Nadia focused more carefully. The increased resistance was finally noticeable. Not difficult, just present. She braced her feet, drove through her legs, kept her spine neutral, brought the yoke upward, paused at the marker, and lowered it smoothly. Pass. The green strip disappeared. Blue slid into place. Someone 2 lanes over muttered, "That cannot be right." Nadia turned. What? The cadet looked away. Instructor Kesson had stopped watching the central group. He was watching Nadia. Hold, he called. Every lane froze. A chorus of disappointed sounds followed. Kesson ignored them. Cadet Mercer, remain at your station. Nadia released the yoke. Engineer Bex Torren emerged from the technical booth at the rear of the laboratory. He was shorter than Nadia, broad through the chest, and moved with the stiff economy of a man who had spent too many years crawling beneath machinery designed by people who never expected to repair it. He carried a diagnostic tablet in one hand. What did she do? Kesson pointed at Nadia's station. 3 automatic category jumps. Bex stopped walking. 3 consecutive. Bex looked at Nadia. Nadia raised both hands. I followed the arrows. That was not an accusation. It sounded like one. It was an accusation against the machine. That I can support. Bex crouched beside the counterforce housing. The rest of the cadets were openly staring now. Nadia's Sarath neighbor finally introduced himself. Rel Sen. Nadia Mercer. I know. You do. You are the only human in the class. Well. Rel leaned toward her. Is this normal? Nadia glanced down at the machine. I don't know what these colors mean. That is not reassuring. Bex removed a diagnostic panel. Manual 0 check. Kesson nodded. The counterforce assembly cycled. Numbers streamed across Bex's tablet. He frowned. Then he ran it again. What? Kesson asked. Nothing. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. Beck stood. He tapped the side of Nadia's station. To the blue range. Nadia looked at Kesson. He gestured for her to continue. Best effort, he reminded her. Nadia's mouth twitched. Still certain. This time nobody laughed. Kesson crossed his arms. Yes, Mercer. All right. The blue load came on. Nadia set her stance. The difference was real now. She inhaled, tightened her midsection, and brought the yoke upward. It moved steadily. At the chest marker, she held it. 1 second. 2. 3. She lowered. Pass. The blue strip dropped. The machine hesitated. A warning icon appeared. Category limit exceeded. Then an orange strip slid forward. Rel Sen stared. His own strip was orange. Now we match, Nadia said. Rel did not answer. Across the lab, Kesson turned to Bex. Still think the machine is innocent. The machine thinks she is the problem now. What does that mean? It has exhausted the expected correction range from her intake class. Nadia heard him. So now what? Bex looked at her. Now we stop believing the prediction. The sentence changed the room. Not dramatically. Nobody gasped. But several students glanced at their own colored markers. For 17 weeks, the capacity strips had felt like grades. Not official grades. Something more personal. They told you where the academy expected you to belong before you ever touched the equipment. Students joked about them, argued over them, celebrated when one went up, avoided discussing them when one went down. Nadia had assumed the strips were simple safety labels. Apparently, everyone else had been reading them as identity. Bex disconnected the automatic classification feed. Manual measurement from here. Kesson looked surprised. You are overriding the assessment profile. I am removing it from the loop. Why? Because it has already been wrong 4 times. Rel Sen raised one hand. Engineer. Bex turned. Yes. If the system was wrong, how do we know the load was correct? Bex's face brightened. It was the first time Nadia had seen him look happy. That is an excellent question. He disappeared into the technical booth. 30 seconds later, he returned carrying a mechanical tension gauge. It looked older than everything else in the room. No holographic surface. No adaptive software. No species database. Just metal, reinforced cable, and a mechanical dial protected behind thick, transparent material. He clipped it into Nadia's counterforce line. This gauge does not know what species you are, he said. Nadia nodded. I already like it. It barely knows numbers. Even better. He reset the dial. Again. The orange range load engaged. Nadia raised it. Held. Lowered. Bex watched the mechanical gauge. Then the digital readout. Then the gauge again. They agree. Kesson stepped closer. Within tolerance. Less than 0.5% difference. And Mercer. Bex glanced at Nadia. Nadia flexed her fingers. Fine. The engineer stared at her hands. Fine. Do you want a more dramatic word? I would like a useful one. Warm. Your hands are warm. My back shoulders a little. Bex looked at Kesson. That is useful. Rel whispered, why? Nadia answered before Bex could. Because warm isn't tired. Bex pointed at her. Yes. The assessment resumed. But it was no longer a normal assessment. The other lanes continued for a while. Students lifted. Machines chimed. Colors changed. Kesson tried to keep attention distributed. He failed. Every time Nadia's yoke engaged, conversations stopped. The next movement was different. Instead of a straight vertical pull, the yoke shifted 30 centimeters to the left. The academy called it an offset recovery. The candidate had to lift an uneven load while keeping the frame level. Rel Sen passed his own attempt with visible effort. His silver shoulders tightened. All 6 of his major joints adjusted independently, distributing the force in a way Nadia could not imitate even if she wanted to. He lowered the yoke and exhaled sharply. Your turn. Nadia stepped forward. Orange range resistance. Offset left. She squatted slightly. Rel frowned. That is not the standard position. Bex looked up. It is legal. Rel said most species keep the torso vertical. Nadia glanced at him. Most species have your shoulders. No. Then I'm not borrowing your technique. She set her hips. The load engaged. Nadia drove upward. Her legs took the first demand. Her hips extended. Her torso stabilized. Her arms guided rather than carried the entire force. The yoke rose. It tilted 1 degree. Nadia corrected it. Held. Lowered. Paused. Bex was staring at the data. Not the total force. The distribution. He replayed the movement. Do that again. Kesson objected. She passed. I know. Then why repeat it? Because the classifier predicted the wrong thing for the wrong reason. Bex enlarged a skeletal model on his tablet. Nadia's body appeared as a simplified network of joints and force lines. The Academy's projected pattern glowed beside the recorded pattern. They barely resembled each other. Rel leaned forward. What am I looking at? Bex pointed. The prediction model expected 64% of the peak transfer through upper body structures. Nadia looked at the display. And actual. 41. Kesson understood first. It thinks she lifts like us. Bex shook his head. It thinks she lifts like a statistically blended version of everyone. Nadia laughed once. That sounds useful. It usually is. For cargo. For people. That sounds less useful. Bex did not argue. He zoomed in. The model sees a 2-arm lift and estimates performance from arm architecture, shoulder leverage, spine geometry, and mass. Rel pointed at Nadia's recorded force path. But she is using everything. Correct. Nadia shrugged. Why wouldn't I? Rel stared at her as though she had asked why people did not simply grow extra lungs. Bex smiled faintly. Exactly. The afternoon schedule began to collapse. One group finished its practical and stayed. Then another. A methods instructor appeared in the doorway. Nobody had called her. 2 senior technicians entered 5 minutes later. One leaned against the wall and pretended to review a tablet while watching every movement Nadia made. Nadia noticed. She decided not to care. The next test was a controlled hold. No lifting speed mattered. The yoke would already be raised. The candidate had to maintain position while the counterforce system gradually increased resistance. Tell me when, Beck said. Nadia looked at him. When what? When you reach your safe maximum. Define maximum. The engineer closed his eyes. Kesson made a sound that might have been amusement. Bex opened his eyes again. Maximum effort you can produce while maintaining stable posture, controlled breathing, intact grip, and the ability to lower safely. That is better. I repair machines for a living. I should not have to write human language definitions during assessments. Maybe your machines need better questions. Bex pointed toward the yoke. Hands. Nadia gripped it. The counterforce began low, then increased. The resistance climbed gradually enough that Nadia could feel the changes. For the first several steps, there was almost nothing. Then the yoke began to feel substantial. Her shoulders engaged harder. Her breathing deepened. The laboratory quieted again. Bex watched the mechanical gauge. Kesson watched Nadia's posture. Rel watched her face. The resistance increased. Nadia adjusted her feet half a step wider. Still stable, Bex asked. Yes. Another increase. Her forearms tightened. Another. A faint tremor began in her right hand. Bex saw it. Approaching. No. Then what is that? My grip correcting. Another increase. Nadia's jaw tightened. This one required work. For the first time that afternoon, she was no longer casual. Her attention narrowed. She breathed through her nose. Held. The machine climbed again. Nadia said, "Stop." Bex hit the control immediately. The resistance froze. You reached it. No. Bex stared at her. Then why did you tell me to stop? My right wrist started rotating. Pain. No. Instability. Potentially. Could you hold more? Yes. How much? No idea. Could you safely lower from more? Maybe. Bex waited. Nadia looked at him. You asked for a safe maximum. The engineer slowly nodded. Yes. That was it. He looked at Kesson. Kesson looked back. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Bex said, "That is the first intelligent thing anyone has done in this laboratory all afternoon." Nadia released the yoke. Rel stared at her. You stopped before your limit. Yes, but this is a maximum assessment. It is a safe maximum assessment. You could have scored higher. Nadia looked at him. Against who? Rel opened his mouth, then closed it. The Academy ranking display remained active on the far wall. Nadia's name had climbed from 22nd to 4th, then 3rd, then 2nd. Now it was flashing because the system could not decide whether her latest result was a completed maximum or an interrupted attempt. Nadia pointed at it. That thing. Rel nodded. I don't know enough about this place to break a wrist for a screen. Rel looked at his own position. Sixth. His expression changed. Not embarrassment. Something more complicated. The sort of discomfort that happened when a person realized they had been obeying a rule nobody had actually written. Instructor Kesson saw it too. Everyone, he called. The remaining students turned. The ranking display is suspended. A collective groan. Kesson raised his voice. Your emergency logistics assessment is not a competition. Someone near the rear said, it has scores. It has measurements. It sorts them. That was not intended as a social hierarchy. Rel said quietly, then you should not display it like one. Kesson looked at him. Rel looked ready to regret speaking. Instead, Kesson turned toward the wall. Engineer. Bex hit a control. The ranking disappeared. The Academy crest replaced it. A strange release moved through the students. Nadia noticed shoulders drop. Hands unclench. Nobody had known the ranking bothered them until it was gone. Kesson looked at Nadia. You have complicated my lesson. I've been here 3 hours. Exactly. The next morning, Laboratory 4 opened early. Nadia arrived 12 minutes before the scheduled continuation. Bex was already beneath her station, with half the housing removed. Morning. A muffled reply came from inside the machine. Nadia crouched. You sleep here. No. Sure. A tool clicked. I went home for almost 4 hours. That is not helping your case. Beck slid out. He had a smear of grease across one cheek. Yesterday proved the ordinary counterforce sequence is inadequate. For me. For your assessment. Difference. Yes. He sat up. Do not get excited. I'm not. That is worse. Nadia leaned against the station. So what are we doing? Different geometries. More lifting. Not exactly. The equipment had changed overnight. Instead of one yoke, Nadia's lane now connected to 3 systems. A floor pull, a lateral drag, and a suspended rescue frame. Bex pointed at them. If the issue is merely that the vertical lift movement happens to suit you, these should expose it. And if they do, then I become more annoyed. At me. At statistics. Nadia smiled. I definitely like you more than yesterday. Relsen entered, carrying 2 cups. He handed one to Nadia. She sniffed it. What is this? Caffeine. What kind? The kind approved for humans. She took a cautious sip. It tasted like coffee that had once heard a description of chocolate and become ambitious. Thanks. Rel looked at Bex. Are observers allowed today? No. Good. Students are allowed. Rel brightened. Bex pointed at him. You touch nothing. Rel nodded. Understood. The floor pull came first. Nadia attached the rescue harness around her hips. The force would try to drag her backward. Her job was to move a weighted sled along a 5-meter rail. No jerking. No running. No using the rail walls for leverage. The first load matched the highest ordinary student certification. Nadia moved it. Slowly. Not easily. But cleanly. Bex recorded everything. The second added 20%. Nadia moved that too. The third changed the friction pattern halfway through. She adjusted without stopping. By the end, sweat had formed at her temples. Rel pointed. You are tired. Nadia wiped her forehead. A little. He looked almost relieved. Good. Thanks. I mean. I know what you mean. The lateral drag was harder. Human joints were not magical. Nadia discovered that quickly. Her first attempt was ugly. She tried to muscle through the movement. The frame pulled her off alignment. Beck stopped the test. Again. Nadia reset. Her second attempt improved. The third was clean, but nowhere near as dominant as the vertical patterns. Bex seemed pleased. Excellent. Nadia stared at him. I nearly fell over. Exactly. You are a strange man. We found a weakness. I had several before breakfast. A useful weakness. Rel leaned against the rail. What does it mean? It means she is not universally stronger than the model. Nadia raised a finger. Important sentence. Bex nodded. It means the model is not useless, it is incomplete. He brought up the force maps. Mercer is unusually efficient in movements where she can connect ground reaction force through hips, trunk, shoulders, and arms. He switched displays. When lateral loading isolates stabilizing structures, the advantage narrows. Rel studied the data. So the human body is not stronger everywhere. No, Nadia said, some humans would be terrible at this. Bex nodded. Also important. He pointed at her intake record. Your species matters, your training matters, your individual physiology matters. The Academy has been treating the first category as if it predicts the other two. Nadia looked at her file. Did nobody ever notice? Usually the error is small enough that nobody cares. And now, Bex looked around at the extra sensors he had bolted into the station. Now I care very much. The suspended cradle came after lunch. It was the kind used for rescue simulations where multiple injured people had to be moved when powered systems were unavailable. 4 handles, 4 cadets, 1 frame. The Academy expected teams to coordinate their effort, raise it from a low support rack, carry it 3 meters, rotate, then lower it. Nadia looked at the cradle. Then at Bex. No. Bex blinked. No. You have that face. What face? The one that says you're about to ask something stupid very carefully. Rel covered his mouth. Bex ignored him. I would like a single position baseline. With 1/4 of the normal load. Yes. Fine. 1/4 was easy. Half was not easy, but manageable. At 3/4 of the standard 4-cadet total, Nadia's breathing became audible. Bex stopped the test. Nadia looked at him. I didn't say stop. I did. Wide. Your left shoulder shifted. It was fine. It was compensating. I could keep going. I know. Then. Bex folded his arms. Yesterday you taught me the difference between maximum effort and safe effort. Nadia stared at him. Rel looked delighted. Bex continued. I learned. Nadia exhaled. Annoying. Engineering is the disciplined practice of becoming annoying before equipment fails. Kesson entered during the argument. Behind him came 3 members of the Academy Classification Board. Nadia recognized them from orientation. Not names. Shapes. One wore the white-trimmed uniform of academic standards. One represented medical safety. The third wore no academy colors at all, only a gray administrative coat. That one looked at the suspended cradle first. Then Nadia. Cadet Merceau. Yes. I am Chair Varin. Okay. Varin waited. Nadia realized he expected something. So. Better. Kesson sighed. Chair Varin walked around the cradle. We have reviewed yesterday's data. Beck said, and this morning, I received it 20 minutes ago. Then you have not reviewed it. I have read the summary. That is not the same thing. Varin looked at him. Nadia liked Bex more every hour. The medical representative stepped forward. Cadet Mercer, do you understand that you are not required to continue beyond the normal certification sequence? Yes. Do you wish to continue? Nadia glanced at Bex. Then Kesson. Then the cradle. What exactly are you trying to learn? Varin answered. Your maximum certified manual capacity. Nadia shook her head. That is not what you're trying to learn. Varin's eyes narrowed. What am I trying to learn? Whether your system is wrong about humans. Silence. Bex looked down, hiding a smile. Varin said, that is part of it. Then say that. Kesson murmured, Mercer. What? The medical representative stepped in before the exchange could worsen. We need enough evidence to determine whether human intake classifications require revision. That makes sense. Would you continue under engineering supervision? Nadia nodded. Yes. Varin relaxed slightly. Nadia added, but I'm not breaking myself for a number. His expression tightened again. Bex stepped between them. Good, then we understand each other. Varin said, Engineer Torren, the board has authorized the upper student certified range. Bex stopped smiling. How far? All of it. No. Varin blinked. You asked for authorization. I asked to continue testing. I did not ask you to erase safety margins. The laboratory equipment is certified for ordinary student usage. And Cadet Mercer is a student. Bex pointed at the cradle. That is a 4-person system. Varin said, you already tested her at 3/4. And stopped. Because of fatigue. Because I saw compensation. Nadia interrupted. I wasn't fatigued. Everyone looked at her. She regretted speaking immediately. Bex said, thank you, Cadet. You're welcome. That did not help. Sorry. Varin looked from Nadia to Bex. What is your recommendation? Bex considered. Continue through the certified range, one geometry at a time, with manual confirmation after every stage. That seems reasonable. And Mercer decides when Mercer stops. Varin frowned. The examiner determines completion. The candidate determines whether her body remains safe. The medical representative nodded. Agreed. Varin looked irritated. But he nodded. Agreed. Nadia looked at the cradle again. So we're doing the stupid thing. Beck said professionally. The upper range sequence began an hour later. Laboratory 4 had been closed to ordinary classes. The ranking wall remained off. The observation gallery remained locked. Only 7 people were present. Nadia, Rel, Kesson, Bex, the 3 board representatives. That was enough. The rescue cradle was configured for a single central grip bar. Bex had added redundant mounting sensors at each corner. A thick mechanical force gauge sat in line with the electronic system. The red capacity strip holder on Nadia's station was almost empty. Over 17 weeks, Nadia had barely noticed the strips. Now she knew the sequence by heart. Red, yellow, green, blue, orange, white, black. The Academy had 1 strip above black. Gold. It was not used during ordinary student assessments. Bex held it between 2 fingers. I dislike this. Nadia rolled her shoulders. You have said that 6 times. I am ensuring the record is clear. Very clear. He clipped the gold strip into place. The tiny plastic click seemed absurdly small. The cradle settled onto its supports. The load system activated. Gold certification, Beck said. Single central lift. Raise 12 centimeters. Hold 2 seconds. Controlled descent. Nadia looked at the cradle. How heavy? In your units. Yes. Bex told her. Rel made a choking sound. Nadia looked at him. What? That is heavier than the transport vehicle we used during Field Week. No, it is. The empty one. Nadia paused. Those. Rel stared. That was supposed to concern you. It does. You do not look concerned. I'm deciding where my feet go. Nadia stepped onto the marked platform. This time, nobody made jokes. She closed her hands around the central grip. The metal was textured. Dry. Cold. She tested the position once. Then again. Her shoulders settled. Beck said, remember, you stop for any instability. Yes. Pain. Yes. Joint shift. Yes. Grip compromise. Yes. Anything you cannot identify. Yes, Dad. Rel laughed. Bex did not. I will cancel this. Nadia looked at him. Ready. Bex stepped back. The cradle unlocked. Nadia inhaled. For the first time since the assessment began, the load felt serious before it moved. Not impossible. Serious. She tightened everything. Feet into floor. Knees tracking. Hips loaded. Back rigid. Shoulders down. Hands set. Then she drove upward. The cradle moved. Slowly. There was no dramatic leap. No effortless human miracle. The frame rose centimeter by centimeter. Nadia's arms shook. Her face tightened. A sound escaped through her teeth. Rel stopped breathing. Bex watched the corner sensors. 6 centimeters. 8. 10. 12. Hold. Nadia held. The frame tried to tilt. She corrected. 1 second. 2. Down. She lowered it. Carefully. The instant the cradle settled onto its supports, Nadia stepped backward and bent over with her hands on her thighs. Her breathing came hard. Rel rushed forward. You all right? She held up one finger. Wait. 30 seconds later, she straightened. Yeah. Bex handed her water. You reached gold. Nadia drank. Congratulations to gold. Chair Varin was staring at the mechanical gauge. How much margin? Bex did not answer. Varin repeated the question. Engineer. Bex looked annoyed. The equipment recorded the load. That is not what I asked. Nadia capped the bottle. He wants to know if I could do more. Varin looked at her. Yes. Nadia shrugged. Yes. Rel turned. You just looked like you were fighting the floor. I was. How much more? No idea. Bex finally answered. Her recorded muscular output did not show terminal effort. Varin stepped closer. You can determine that. Approximately. Then increase. Bex said no. Nadia looked at him. Bex looked at her. Do not. I didn't say anything. You were about to. I was going to ask what the next test is. There is no next student strip. Nadia glanced at the holder. It was empty. Then we are done. Varin said, not necessarily. Bex's expression went flat. Joe, we have one authorized diagnostic increment remaining within laboratory structural certification. Bex shook his head. That is not part of the student system. It does not need to be. Nadia raised a hand. What does it change? The engineer hesitated, then answered. Counterforce increases by 8%. That's it. That is enough. Is the cradle rated for it? Yes. The mount? Yes. The floor? Yes. Am I? Bex looked at her. That is the only question I cannot answer. Nadia considered the cradle. Her forearms still burned. Her lower back felt used but stable. Shoulders tired. Grip functional. Breathing recovered. Nothing hurt. She had lifted heavier things on Earth. Not this exact way. Not cleanly. Not from this position. But the load itself did not frighten her. The problem was everything around it. She looked at the four corner mounts. Can I inspect it? Varin frowned. Inspect what? The machine. Beck said yes. Nadia walked around the cradle. She crouched beside one mounting foot. Touched nothing. Just looked. The rescue frame was designed for 4 cadets, meaning 4 bodies naturally spread force across 4 positions. The central grip adapter concentrated that distribution. Bex had reinforced it. But Nadia could see tiny details now that she knew what to look for. The way the brackets met the floor. The direction of the load paths. The slight polished line where one retaining collar had moved during the gold attempt. She pointed. That. Bex crouched immediately. He ran a finger beside the mark. His expression changed. How much movement? Nadia asked. Not enough to trip the sensor. That is not what I asked. Bex glanced up at her. Less than a millimeter. Is that normal? No. Chevarin stepped closer. The system remained within certification. Beck stood. Yes. So the diagnostic increment remains permitted. Bex's jaw tightened. Nadia looked between them. Then at the mount again. Can the collar move safely? Within limits. Can you tell if it will move more? Not until load is applied. Nadia straightened. All right. Bex stared at her. All right what? One attempt. No. She blinked. You just spent a day proving I should choose when I stop. Yes. I haven't stopped. I have. Why? Because I am the engineer. Varin said, you do not have authority to terminate a board diagnostic while the system remains within. Bex turned so fast Varin stopped speaking. I absolutely do. The medical representative stepped between them. We are not turning this into a jurisdiction argument. Nadia looked at Bex. What would make you comfortable? Nothing. That is dramatic. The mount moved. Less than a millimeter. Machines communicate in millimeters. Nadia folded her arms. And bodies communicate in pain. Yes. I don't have any. Good. Then both systems are still talking. Bex stared at her for a long moment. Rel said quietly, I think she has a point. Nobody asked you. I know. Kesson finally spoke. One increment. Everyone turned. The instructor had been quiet for most of the upper sequence. Now he looked at Bex. One. Bex said nothing. Kesson continued. Manual abort in your hand. Mercer stops for any change she does not like. You stop for any change in the frame you do not like. Nadia nodded. That works, Varin said, and if the increment is completed. Kesson looked at him. The assessment ends, regardless of remaining capability. Yes. Varin's mouth tightened. What then is the result? Nadia answered. That your test ran out. Nobody spoke. Bex looked at her, then at the empty strip holder, then at the cradle. He exhaled. One attempt. The final configuration took 20 minutes. Bex checked every mount himself. Twice. He installed a manual sensor on the collar Nadia had noticed. He placed another technician's gauge beneath the central adapter. He tested the emergency release, then tested it again. Nadia sat on a bench and waited. Rel sat beside her. You are nervous. Yes. He looked surprised. You admit that easily. Why wouldn't I? You have not seemed nervous. I was. Yesterday. Yes. The whole time. No. When? When people started getting excited. Rel thought about that. Not about the lifting. The lifting is the simple part. He looked toward Chair Varin. The people are the dangerous part. People who want a number can get stupid around machines. Rel nodded slowly. My species has a saying. Nadia waited. He said a measurement becomes a weapon when someone wants it to win an argument. Nadia looked at him. That is annoyingly good. I know. Do not become unbearable. Bex called her name. Nadia stood. The laboratory seemed larger now, or emptier. The ordinary training equipment had been pushed back from the central lane. Only the rescue cradle remained beneath the lights. No crowd. No cheers. No ranking display. No colored strip. The little holder beside Nadia's station was empty. She walked toward the cradle. Bex met her halfway. If I say down, you lower. Yes. If I say release, you release. Yes. If you feel anything change. I stop. Anything. I know. He looked her directly in the eyes. This is not a test of courage. I know. It is not a test of pride. I know. It is not a test of whether humans are better than anyone. Nadia's expression softened. I know. Bex nodded. Good. She stepped into position. The final diagnostic resistance engaged. 8% beyond gold. On paper, it did not sound like much. Nadia felt the difference immediately. Her first pull did not move the cradle. She reset. Nobody spoke. She changed her stance by 2 centimeters. Wrapped her grip again. Inhaled. Locked her trunk. Drove. The cradle lifted. 1 centimeter. 2. The effort climbed through her body in layers. Legs. Hips. Back. Shoulders. Hands. Her arms shook hard now. The muscles around her ribs tightened. Her vision narrowed. 5 centimeters. Bex watched the gauges. 6. Nadia heard Rel breathing behind her. 7. Then something changed. Not in her body. In the machine. A sensation passed through the grip bar. Tiny. Almost nothing. A soft sideways give. Anyone who had only trained in a gym might have ignored it. Anyone chasing a record might have called it noise. Nadia had spent years around industrial lifting systems. She knew the difference between strain and movement. She stopped pulling. The cradle hung 7 centimeters above the supports. "Nadia," Beck said. She did not answer. Her entire body was occupied. The bar shifted again. Barely. But this time, she knew where it came from. Left rear mount. Down. Bex's hand moved toward the abort control. Nadia began lowering before he touched it. Slowly, the frame descended. 6 centimeters. 5. Her arms trembled violently. 4. The mount gave another microscopic movement. Nadia did not rush. That was the dangerous instinct. Drop the load. Escape. Let the machine catch it. But the catch system would spike the force through the same mounting points already moving. So she kept control. 3, 2, 1. The cradle settled onto its supports. The counterforce disengaged. Nadia let go. Her fingers opened slowly. She stepped backward, then sat on the floor. Not gracefully, just down. Rel rushed toward her. The medical representative reached her first. Pain. No. Hands. Nadia held them out. They were shaking. Any numbness? No. Back. Tired. Shoulder. Fine. The medical representative checked her pupils, pulse, grip. Bex did not come over. He was on his knees beside the left rear mount. The laboratory remained silent. Chair Varin stood several meters away, face unreadable. Kesson moved beside Bex. What? The engineer did not answer immediately. He removed the small manual sensor. Checked it. Then looked at the floor mark beneath the mount. Movement. How much? 2.6 millimeters. Varin approached. Still inside structural certification. Beck stood. Yes. Varin looked toward Nadia. Then the attempt was incomplete. Beck stared at him. For a second, Nadia thought the engineer might actually hit an administrator. Instead, Bex walked to the central console. He brought up the mounting data. Then the force curve. Then Nadia's physiological measurements. 3 graphs appeared side by side. He pointed at the first. Candidate output still climbing. Second, grip stability degraded but recoverable. Third, structural mount migration accelerating. Varin said nothing. Bex enlarged the final graph. The limiting system was not Cadet Mercer. He pointed at the cradle. It was us. The sentence landed harder than any cheer could have. Rel looked at Nadia. Nadia was still sitting on the floor. She leaned back on her hands. Can I say something? Kesson nodded. She looked at Varin. I did ask. Rel made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cough. Even the medical representative smiled. Chair Varin did not. But after a moment, he nodded. Yes. Nadia wiped sweat from her face. You did. Bex walked to the empty capacity strip holder. He touched it with one finger. There is no category above gold. Varin said, then create one. Bex shook his head. No. Why not? Because that repeats the mistake. Varin frowned. We need a classification. We need a measurement. What is the difference? Bex gestured toward Nadia. A classification says what she is before she does anything. He pointed toward the recorded force curve. A measurement says what happened. Kesson looked at the blank ranking wall. No names, no colors, no hierarchy, only the academy crest. The medical representative asked, "What do you recommend?" Bex took a long breath. Void the species-derived capacity assignments for emergency logistics. Varen's head snapped toward him. All species. Yes. Because of one human. Because of one demonstrated failure in the model. That is excessive. No, pretending a known failure does not exist because it has only been proven once would be excessive. Varen looked at Kesson. The instructor nodded. I agree. Rel said, so do I. Everyone looked at him. He raised both hands. I know nobody asked. Nadia laughed. The board did not reach a decision that afternoon. That disappointed several people. Nadia was not one of them. Institutions did not usually transform because someone produced a dramatic number. They produced meetings, questions, arguments, forms, more meetings. Nadia understood that. What surprised her was how quickly the academy changed the thing directly in front of it. By the next morning, the capacity strips were gone from Laboratory 4. Not permanently. Bex refused to throw away perfectly functional safety markers. But they were no longer assigned automatically when a student entered. Every lane started blank. Cadets performed a low-risk baseline movement first. Then the system selected an appropriate certification band from observed data. Rel Sen arrived for the first session under the new procedure. He stared at the empty holder beside his yoke. This feels wrong. Nadia was helping Bex recalibrate a floor sensor. What does? It does not tell me where I belong. Nadia looked up. That's the point. Rel frowned. I liked orange. You can still wear orange. That is not the same. No. He looked at the yoke. Then at Nadia. Do humans always enjoy destroying systems? Mostly printers. What is a printer? Nadia smiled. Proof the universe hates us too. Instructor Kesson entered. Cadet Sen. Rel straightened. Yes, sir. Your baseline. Rel approached the yoke. Then paused. He looked at Kesson. Do you want my best effort? Kesson's eyes moved briefly toward Nadia. No. Rel blinked. Kesson continued. I want your best controlled effort under the stated conditions. Rel smiled. Better question. Yes. The practical began. Over the next 3 days, something else happened. Students who had spent months embarrassed by their low-capacity assignments began performing differently. Some improved. Some stayed exactly where their old classifications had predicted. One student who had always been placed near the top performed worse under the new procedure because his species-based estimate had hidden a poor recovery technique. Nobody celebrated that. Nobody needed to. The measurements stopped feeling like judgments. They became information. Nadia's own assessment remained technically incomplete. The board hated that. Bex loved it. Her file read, Manual capacity, VRFID, above standard student certification. Maximum not established. Limiting factor, laboratory rescue mount tolerance during final diagnostic. Test terminated by candidate before structural fault. Nadia read the entry twice. Then looked at Bex. You made me sound responsible. You were responsible. Can you put that in my disciplinary file too? No. Worth asking. The classification board eventually approved a broader review. Not only for humans. That mattered to Nadia. The low-gravity species had complained for years that the Academy's baseline work simulations exhausted them too quickly. Heavy-framed species had complained that mobility scores punished them for body plans the institution already knew they possessed. Species with distributed limb systems performed brilliantly in some rescue geometries and badly in others, but their single average capacity score hid both facts. One human had not proven humans were superior. She had proven the question was badly designed. The Academy could work with that. A week after the assessment, Nadia returned to Laboratory 4 alone. Her class had moved on to emergency transport coordination. Bex had asked her to stop by and sign the final equipment incident record. The room was quiet. The cradle had been repaired. The left rear mount had been replaced with a reinforced assembly. Nadia crouched beside it. A small engraved inspection mark had been added beside the collar. She touched the floor next to it. "Do not get sentimental." Bex's voice came from behind her. Nadia stood. "I was checking your work." "Of course." He handed her the incident record. She read it. No dramatic language. No mention of impossible human strength. No claim that the Academy had witnessed history. Just measurements. Loads. Observed movement. Safety decisions. Corrective action. At the bottom sat one sentence. Candidate terminated attempt upon detecting structural movement before automated safety threshold activation. Nadia looked up. The system didn't catch it first. "No. That bother you?" "Deeply." "Good. I have lowered the threshold." "Better." She signed. Bex took the tablet. "Advanced Emergency Logistics accepted your transfer." Nadia blinked. "I didn't apply." "I did." "That sounds illegal." "It is administrative." "Worse. They need people who understand loads." "They already have you." "They need people who understand when not to lift them." Nadia looked toward the four-person cradle. That part she understood. Power was simple. Apply force. Move object. The difficult part was knowing what the force belonged to. A collapsed wall. A rescue harness. A trapped person. A machine trying to become the weakest link in the chain. She picked up her bag. At the doorway, she paused. Her old station stood empty. No student was assigned there until the afternoon block. The counterforce unit had been reassembled. The mechanical gauge was gone. The automatic classifier had been updated. Beside the yoke, the small plastic holder remained. Red had once been clipped there. Then yellow, green, blue, orange, white, black, gold. Now there was nothing. No label. No prediction. No quiet instruction telling the next person what the Academy believed they were before they touched the machine. The empty clip waited beside the controls, waiting for evidence. Nadia looked at it for a second. Then she left the laboratory. The clip stayed empty.